This is Continuum Drag, a weekly podcast revisiting television sci-fi, fantasy, and everything in between. This week, Nick Fury, Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D.
We need you back.
Maybe I've gotten used to the wilderness.
And maybe you're full of it. Hydra's back in the game now.
That's impossible! Von Strucker's dead. I killed him myself.
Yesterday, Hydra stormed Trinity Base. They stole Von Strucker's body. And they killed Clay in the process.
Damn.
I'm sorry about Clay, Nick, but it looks like Hydra's trying to send you a message.
Looks like I heard it.
Welcome to Continuum Drag, the podcast suffering from MCU multiverse madness. I'm Luke, here with my co-host Jordan. What's real, Jordan?
Let us rock and let us roll.
The classic Shield saying.
Is that their classic thing?
No, I don't think so. But the moment I heard that first thought, I was like, yeah, it's the classic line.
Hey, let me ask you though. That guy who delivered that line, is he the worst actor in the history of cinema?
I don't think he's David Hasselhoff. I think the other guy was David Hasselhoff.
Oh, David Hasselhoff is much better than that guy.
Yeah, that's true. He's got a certain charm.
Well, now that we're way off track from the start, I like it. It's going well. Jordan, I want to bring back a segment I tried to create years ago that got edited out, called What's Real?
No, I did What's Real.
No, I was just going to say, I have a recommendation for our listeners.
Oh, okay.
I watched a great little Japanese science fiction movie the other day, and I think our listeners would enjoy it.
Go for it. What is it?
It's called Beyond the Infinite 2 Minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And it's about a cafe owner who he lives above his shop, and one day he goes up to his apartment and he looks into the monitor in his room that looks into the monitor in his cafe, and he sees himself because his monitor now is 2 minutes in the future. So he can see 2 minutes in the future only into this one monitor in his cafe. And it's a 70-minute little science fiction comedy. Great stuff. I think our listeners would love it. I watched it. I'm like, so much better than Nick Fury. I can't believe I watched Nick Fury for more time.
And what's the name of this thing again? Then?
Beyond the Infinite 2 Minutes.
There you go.
It's a great little pseudo one take. A lot of fun.
I recommend Naked Gun 2.5. Remember that movie? That was funny.
Why is that science fiction again?
It's not. It was just fun. I remember laughing at that time.
You love OJ in that one particularly.
Yeah, he's really good.
He's a star. You keep saying he's a star. Bring him back.
I was going to say, you got to love a title that gives you the runtime. It's like, this film will be beyond the infinite 2 minutes. So you know what to expect when you're watching it.
Yeah, more than 2 minutes for sure. No end to that 2 minutes potentially, but like definitely more than 2 minutes.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we've made him talk without introducing him for far too long.
My bad.
We have a guest returning this week. Kaveh, welcome back to the program.
Thanks for having me.
Well, when were you here last?
Last time I was on, we went ape, and we watched a couple episodes from the Planet of the Apes TV series.
Oh, right. That's right. Your 2-year ban is concluded, so you're back on the show.
Yeah, but you sound much sicker now.
Yes, I have a non-COVID related cold, so I'm happy to come on here on Zoom and share my...
We did promise your agents we wouldn't bring it up, but it's happening.
There we go. Another 2-year ban starting today.
What was it? 2 years ago that we did Planet of the Apes?
Yeah, almost to the day 2 years ago.
Wow, it doesn't seem that long ago.
It was pre-pandemic, my friend. We used to get together in person, hang out.
Rub lotion on each other's bodies.
Yeah, that was before and after.
That wasn't for the podcast, though.
No.
That was for my podcast. An Ocean of Lotion, starring Kaveh.
Starring?
Hosted by and starring. It's more of a one-man podcast, and I don't record it.
Doesn't sound like a podcast.
Listen, what I do in my own time when I'm recovering from my cold that is not COVID is my business and no one else's.
Well, this week we are watching the 1998 TV movie. What did I write here?
Nick Fury, Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D.
No, I wrote something else, but I cannot read it now. It is Nick Fury, Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D., a special program requested exactly by Kaveh. Kaveh, you asked for this because you are a Marvel super fan. You're a resident Marvel super fan. Am I correct?
I'm a resident Marvel super fan. Also, worth mentioning that this is a TV movie and also backdoor pilot because they were trying to like milk this for all it's worth. And they're like, hey, if it doesn't work as a movie, we can set this up as the first 3 episodes.
I never saw this initially when it was. What did you say? 1998, Luke?
Yes, correct.
When it was out in 1998, but I remember it being heavily promoted and on TV a lot. Like I remember whatever channel it aired on, I remember it airing over and over, and I would keep catching snippets of it, and I would laugh about how bad it was, and I was like, who would ever watch this?
I had a weird, for me, I never remember seeing it on TV, but I remember seeing the VHS at Blockbuster, and when I looked, like just preparing for this, I was shocked to realize it was 98, because I remember it feeling a lot older, like 93, 94-ish, because 98 is around the time, like, X-Men was being, Marvel was doing the movie thing slowly, like 99 was X-Men, I think. So it's weird to see how dated this feels compared to...
It feels like it's from like 1988. That's the level of writing and production value.
Yeah.
It's the production value. It's everything looks a little bit cheaper than it should, you know?
The entire script is just like they were trying to knock off like Commando or something.
Did you notice who wrote it?
Yeah, I've got that right here. Written by David S. Goyer.
What a hack.
Not the worst thing he's credited with writing.
This is the 4th David S. Goyer we've watched.
Is that right? What are the other 3?
We watched Sleepwalkers.
Yeah.
We watched Freaky Links.
Oh, yeah.
And he wrote an episode of Threshold as well.
Oh, wow.
He's quite prolific, if not... the more I watch of his stuff, I'm like, he's not particularly good, is he?
He really got people like swayed away from what he is as a writer with the Dark Knight credit. You know, like he was credited with a large part of that script. Like, I mean, I think him and Christopher Nolan are like the writers of that script, the only 2 writers. And man, like that gave him a lot of bank.
I think from what I can remember of watching his stuff, it does feel like he at some point managed to somehow make himself the comic book guy in Hollywood. So you couldn't make a comic book movie without having him at least partly credited. And I'm sure it was because he knew the lore. So you'd bring him in to make sure you were on side with the lore. But I would assume that he didn't do much writing other than that.
Yeah, I mean, but right before he did Blade too, right? Didn't he do the original? And that's before this. That's before Nick Fury.
And I remember watching Dark City, and as a child, I quite liked it. So maybe that was good. I don't know.
Yeah, prolific career of David S. Goyer. Wow.
You can't keep a mediocre man down. All right. Well, this premiered May 26th, 1998 on Fox. And Jordan, do you want to guess what 2 other shows were on around the time this was on TV that we've watched previously for the podcast?
1998. I would have said, what was that other David Goyer thing? Sleepwalkers? I would say Sleepwalkers, I would say.
Well, you're completely correct about that. Sleepwalkers' last episode aired 5 days after Nick Fury, so two bad shows dying in the same week for him.
And there was a movie as well?
There was another series started 2 weeks after this.
Another series started 2 weeks. 1998. It wouldn't have been Ultraviolet. That would have been too old, too new, I think. 1998.
You'll never guess it. I'm sure you've forgotten we ever watched this.
I'm going to say, I don't know what we watched in the late 90s. Oh, I don't know. Freaky Links.
Invasion America.
Oh, I wouldn't remember that. Yeah, Invasion America.
You've completely blocked that Steven Spielberg animated show out of your mind.
Yeah. That's right. He had a special glove, the character, that like chopped wood.
Jordan, Yosh.
That's right. Oh, you remember so much better than me.
That was the lead character's popular catchphrase, Yosh.
Yosh.
That's why you have that tattooed on your back.
That's right.
I never understood why that was.
Remember, you saw that day we were rubbing cream on each other.
It was an ocean of lotion.
All right. Well, let's get into it. Here is the IMDb summary for Nick Fury, Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. Agent Nick Fury is asked to fight the menace of Hydra after exiling himself to the Yukon since the end of the Cold War.
That's the beginning. It doesn't really tell you anything about the plot, but it gets you going, I guess.
It's at the same time like a very brief synopsis, and yet it encapsulates everything that happens in the hour and a half.
Truly, you don't need any more information in some way.
Yeah.
But it begins with a classic Marvel baddie, the Hydra, springing a heist of a cryogenically frozen body, the body of Baron Wolfgang von Strucker, from a S.H.I.E.L.D. facility where I guess he's being held. So am I wrong? In the Marvel Universe, doesn't Baron Wolfgang von Strucker later change his name to Odd Future?
Well, I don't remember that at all.
This is a hip-hop joke, so sorry, everybody. No response to the hip-hop joke. I apologize.
No. But, explain the joke. And then edit it out.
Do you know the hip-hop group Odd Future?
I do not.
Their full name is Odd Future Wolfgang Kill Them All. Now they just go by Odd Future. And when I
Don't worry,
saw Wolfgang,
Luke,
that's all I thought.
People listening at home are laughing and laughing. They've had to
listeners
pause.
at home love Tyler the Creator. They can't get enough Tyler the Creator.
Well,
Is he in Odd Future?
Yes, he is an Odd Future.
I like it. Go. Good.
Anyway, yes, they're breaking this Baron's body out of a cryogenic lab, and it's pretty stock for this kind of thing. Bad guys break in with the help of an inside man who's like working for S.H.I.E.L.D. to help them like get this body out. But my favorite part of this entire sequence is there's this guy, Clay Quarterman, who shows up in the middle of the like inside man like setting up like hacking the system or whatever he's doing, and he is the most annoying coworker you've ever worked with. Is he walks in, he's just like just shouting profoundness that he thinks is he's like he walks in, this guy's like on a computer and he stands next to him like 1 foot from his face and says, "Ours is not to reason why, but ours is to do and die, right, buddy? Isn't this a great job we've got, buddy?" And he's like in his face, and I was so happy when the guy shot him in the stomach. I'm like, if I could shoot every annoying coworker in the stomach, I'd be so happy.
Well, and if I may, like the one thing funny about that is he doesn't even get that little witticism out. He's shot before he's like, "Ours is not to reason why, ours is to," and then bang, mid sentence. I don't think the guy lets him finish that.
Good. He was the most like that man walked in and like got so close to his face to just have like coworker chit chat. I was so mad at Clay Quartermain. I was so happy when he got shot. I hated that character.
hey, I got a question though. This frozen guy, Baron von Hitler or whatever his name is. Why are they keeping his body? He's dead. Why don't they just like what is the point of even having all this security and all this stuff around this frozen body?
S.H.I.E.L.D.'s a real collector. Loves to collect things. Every bad guy they kill, they keep him on ice just so they can go look at it, think about the time they killed him. You know, it's perfectly normal, reasonable stuff for a hero to do.
My first thoughts were it was going to be a Captain America reference because he's famously kept under ice for 50 years. Well, he's frozen until they find his body, and I was like, "Oh, cool! Are they like showing Captain America?"
So S.H.I.E.L.D's just like a boomer who's really into World War II, and he collects both a little bit of Ally stuff, a little bit of Nazi stuff. He gets a little piece of everything, a little bit of memorabilia.
But anyways, the point of this is that this is sort of the important thing of this movie is this body is important, is what we're going to lose. This frozen body is very important to Hydra, and this is the beginning of them needing to get this body for whatever reason.
Yeah.
It's the frozen MacGuffin.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's the MacGuffin. They steal it good. Somehow Clay Quartermain does not die from his stomach wound, but lives long enough to stand up, grab his gun, and shout that line from the beginning, "Let us rock and let us roll," as if it is also like some profound Shakespeare line. I'm like, please let this man die soon.
It's one of those things where Goyer, or maybe he didn't write it, maybe a studio said you had to have this line. Someone thought, this is the best line. It's so cool. It's the "I'll be back" sort of line. And it just is not good.
There's so many truly awful lines in this that I'm just like, there's no way not one of these is a Goyer original.
You're probably right.
But thankfully, or not, I don't know really what this Clay character also has cameras in his eyes or whatever, so he's able to like record the people who are stealing the Baron, and S.H.I.E.L.D. can later watch it.
He's got the camera in his eye. Where's the microphone, do you think?
In his mouth.
It's in his mouth, where tongue is.
Because what you're alluding to, Luke, is later we see actual footage from this guy's perspective, because we get this villain woman. What's her name?
Her name's Andrea von Strucker, a.k.a. Viper.
That's right. And she basically... does she know that this guy has a camera? Because it seems like she does. Because
apparently it's well known that S.H.I.E.L.D. agents just walk around mic'd all the time.
Yeah, camera in the eye, microphone in the mouth.
And she basically like mocks them is what she's doing. She's like, "You'll never catch me. I'm too cool."
Is Viper a Marvel villain, Kaveh?
Yeah, I think her name is something else in the comics, if I remember correctly. But yeah, the Von Struckers are instrumental. Do you remember them in the MCU movies?
No, I was hoping you could explain to me anything where I might actually know them from.
Von Strucker in the movies is a guy experimenting on who are the twins that one? Elizabeth Olsen plays one of them, and then the other. Oh, like I'm blanking on their names.
Oh
right
yeah, what's Generic-y McGeneric? That guy.
Yeah, they're the ones experimenting on the stones on the two Scarlet Witch and the other one. He's wearing a monocle in most of the MCU movies.
Yeah. Oh, is he? He doesn't stand out in my mind, but he is there, right? That's good.
A monocle's a real sign that you're a villain, huh?
Oh, always.
Also, Jordan, you forgot to mention, not only is Andrea von Strucker robbing the place, also her brother's sort of there, Werner.
Oh yeah, and he looks like, I don't know, like he's a reject villain from Die Hard.
Oh, totally. He's got Die Hard vibes all over him.
Mm-hmm. I like that he's barely a character in this, and his introduction really establishes that because they freeze frame on Andrea's face. They're like, she's the bad guy. And then like they do one of those enhancements and push over her shoulder and like have a really grainy photo of someone in the background. Like, oh, and there's her brother or something. He's also there. That's about as much screen time as he'll get.
I think it was the actor's like headshot that they used in that image too. It was just like, there he is.
What's this evil organization called again?
Hydra.
It does seem like there's a real problem with nepotism, though, right? Because Baron von Hitler guy, he's in charge, and then his daughter is in charge with her brother. Give me a break.
Well, I find it funny too that like they're assuming that like Hydra's dead and gone, and you know at one point we've killed von Strucker, so Hydra's no longer a threat, and obviously his two children are taking his place, and at no point does anyone say the line, with Hydra, you cut off the head, two more will take its place. And it never dawns on them that this organization is called Hydra. It's known for like replicating.
David S. Goyer, he's not steeped in mythical things. He's only steeped in comic books.
Exactly.
And what's funny too is that there'll later be a teleconference with all the lieutenants of Hydra who are still alive and working.
Yeah.
I think S.H.I.E.L.D. has really dropped the ball on the whole Hydra situation.
The point, though, is because they really just need it to be the story point, which is Nick Fury is sort of your old, loose cannon, play by his own rules kind of guy who's been retired or shelved off because they want to do things in a new way and he's sort of too old school. But I guess implying that his last mission, they had beaten this frozen dead guy, and now he's been put out to pasture because Hydra's defeated and they are worrying about other problems. And that's kind of gets us into the movie where we now have to go find old cigar chomping Hasselhoff.
Yeah. Well, you got to bring him back because as Nick dies, he says into his own microphone, Nick, take care of her.
That's right.
And you're left to wonder, it's like, does he have a family? Does he have a daughter that Nick needs to come take care of? And the answer is no. He's referring to an ex-girlfriend that both he and Nick share, who is a grown woman and a perfectly capable person who does not need to be protected by Nick Fury. But his dying words are, Nick, protect a woman we both like dated but hates us now.
Yeah, and it just seems that like David Hasselhoff in this is quite capable, but he's not like especially better than anyone else on S.H.I.E.L.D. Like he's just about as capable as the rest of them too.
That is actually a good point because I kind of thought the same thing, that like, yes, you kind of bring him in, he's kind of like, he's the badass or whatever, but it's not like he's doing things they can't believe. He just like joins the team and kind of takes charge, but there's nothing special about him. Yeah.
He's the real David S. Goyer of the series because he's a real mediocre guy who everyone really looks up to for some reason.
Yeah.
But yes, they go to get Nick. He's in like, I guess it's the Yukon. He's been living in a mine shaft for 5 years or something.
With a painted sign outside that said, you better have a damn good reason for knocking on this door. Did you notice the sign?
That's like such a old Clint Eastwood or something.
It was just, hand painted as if he's sitting there like in his off hours being like, this sign will be really
Guys, sorry to
badass.
keep doing this, but in this universe, what is he doing in the mine? Because we actually see him working in the mine. He has a pickaxe and he's picking at the wall. Is he mining? Is that what he's doing with his life? Or is he renovating?
He's just mining.
He's minding his own business.
Oh, that's pretty good. You could have written this thing.
You could have written this
I really
thing.
should have.
So S.H.I.E.L.D., of course, sends in some agents to go get him to bring him out. One of them is this, like, British guy who I don't even know his name, and it was like...
Alexander Pierce.
Like a non-character if I've ever seen one.
Well, in the MCU, he's played by Robert Redford, if you remember The Winter Soldier. The Robert Redford
that guy,
character.
that guy who did nothing all episode but was there is also Robert Redford in the movies.
He in the movies he's Robert Redford who like turncoats into a villain, but in neither the comics nor the movies is he a British guy. They just kind of Britished him up for this.
Yeah,
pilot?
he's like the new guy who like just got out of school and he's like top of his class.
I think the choice of casting was to juxtapose against Hasselhoff, and sort of like he's sort of rough and ready, and this guy's kind of a little bit prim and proper. And they're like, how do you make him more prim and proper? What if he likes tea? You know?
Yeah, he likes tea, and like David Hasselhoff's the American tough guy who's minding his own business in the cave, and these two are gonna have a nice dynamic.
Honestly, this movie should have been called Nick Fury minding his own business.
And with him, they send that ex-girlfriend that he and Clay used to date, Contessa Valentina Delegra Fortain. What a name.
You know, it just occurs to me that might actually be Lady Hydra who turns into a bad guy too. But if there's someone who knows their Marvel knowledge better than I am listening to this right now, they're probably...
Here's the only thing I know about that character, and only because it's a headline. In the Marvel Universe, isn't she played by Julia Louis-Dreyfus?
Right, that's exactly it. So that is Lady Hydra. Yeah, she's a villain in the comics.
I mean, real step up. I mean, no offense to this actress. She did her best, but there was not a lot to work with. But I mean, Julia Louis-Dreyfus would have been very different in this role.
She was cast, it's Lisa Rinna, the actress. She was cast because she can fit into those leather pants. That's why she was cast.
Absolutely.
But what's weird about it, and I know it's like maybe that thing, maybe it was just handled clumsier back then. They're like, oh, we need to give her the whole name for the fans. But in this movie, if you're just watching this, do you need to know her name is Contessa Valentina del Allegra Fontaine? Why don't they just go, hey, Val? Because they just call her Val for the rest of the movie. It's like, you don't, there's no reason for it. And they had, like, it's just done it, like, she literally shows up and Hasselhoff goes, if it isn't Contessa Valentina del Allegra Fontaine. And I'm like, what? Why would anyone say that?
This film and the script really enjoys referencing the characters in name only, so there's a lot of like name drops here for the comic fans, but in no way do they resemble the personality, the physicality. It's just like name drop.
Well, that's probably why they do it, right? Because if you do know the character, you're like, wait a minute, that British guy who's drinking a cup of tea, that's not what he looks like.
Exactly.
Well, I think and Jordan, to your point, the first thing Nick Fury does when he sees her is say her full name, and the second thing he does is slut shame her, I believe, by calling her an expert at sexpionage.
That's right.
Which incredibly rude way to meet someone you know.
But it doesn't matter because British guy can't convince him to join, come back and join S.H.I.E.L.D. She says the same thing, like, come on. And then he's like, all right. He takes a cigar and chomps it a little bit, and he's like, I guess I can mine your business too, or something like that.
There was a great line about, looks like Hydra's trying to send you a message, and then his response is, looks like I heard it. And then he chomps his cigar and walks out of the seat, and I was like, bravo.
That's great, though, because that's the level of the script. It's stuff like that where you're like, wait a minute, was that funny? I don't, was he telling us something?
Was it funny? Was it clever? Was it charming?
Am I impressed by him? I really want to quickly, and I know, Jordan, you will be the least interested in this, but I'm going to do it anyway. I really need to talk about this love triangle between the Contessa, Clay, and Nick Fury, because it's a huge subplot of this.
You need to talk about it?
I'm obsessed with it because it's so annoying to me. But the best I can tell is there's this like ancient history between them, and this is what I was able to figure out so far, is the three of them were all stationed in Berlin during the Cold War. And somehow during that period of time, Nick and the Contessa started either dating or hooking up or something. But apparently, while they were doing that, Nick was also just like fooling around with lots of other women. So the Contessa left him and then hooked up with Clay. So the three of them this is a real tight love triangle there. And Fury was so mad that she was sleeping with Clay, he essentially blamed her entirely for ruining the relationship. Had no trouble with Clay sleeping with her. He's like, this is all your fault, Contessa. And then she says that her time in Berlin with them was awful because they treated it like a boys' club where they excluded her perpetually. And so Nick Fury just seems like a monster. Every part of this relationship that's explained to me is just like Nick Fury is one of the worst human beings who's ever walked the earth.
That's way more detail than I remember, but what dawned on me was he was mad at her for cheating on him, and her response is, but you cheated on me first.
All the time. And like his best friend was the one she cheated on with, does not blame the best friend at all. He's like, well, that's okay. He was just getting a little piece, and I get that. But this woman, I'm like, I hate you, Nick Fury. I hate you so much.
This is something we've seen, and weirdly, it's a theme through our many shows and TV movies we've seen over the last few years, is that this is almost a 1970s protagonist where you meet him, he's supposed to be cool, and so you as a viewer are just immediately supposed to like him and be on his side because he is an archetype of a certain amount of male masculinity. But because the character is so poorly written or thinly written, and then also, as you're saying, it kind of given these gross characteristics, where you're watching, you're like, well, I don't like him at all. But it's like the script just goes, well, you will like him. You will like him because he's cool, right? And it's like, I don't know if he's earned it at all.
But he smokes a cigar where he's not supposed to smoke a cigar.
And he's got an eye patch on his face.
Yeah.
Yeah.
On his face.
And he wears a leather jacket.
Yes, Nick Fury is our classic, most toxic hero of all time.
Can we say, though, let's stop real quick. How did we all feel about David Hasselhoff? I don't think we've mentioned it. It's David Hasselhoff as Nick Fury. How do we feel about it?
I'll start. I actually think he did a great job.
I think he tried his best. I don't think the physicality was there the way they'd hoped. The fight scenes were stiff, to say the least.
I think that's on the show more than him. Here's the thing. It's a badly written character, and his whole thing is just to like spout one-liners and be like a fake badass. And I will say David Hasselhoff is far more committed than he has any right to be.
I would agree, but I don't think he's as good maybe as Luke you feel. However, I do think he's committed, and I think he is delivering a slight level of tongue-in-cheek cheese that he kind of gets what this movie is. The difference is I don't think most of the actors are doing the same sort of thing. So he's kind of like chewing the scenery in this weird, like kind of over-the-top character. But it's a little bit anachronistic for the rest of the movie, which I think is trying to be as serious as possible. I would disagree. I think the woman who playing the villain, she also kind of gets the cartoony aspect of what this movie is.
Here's one of my biggest concerns with the way he's written. It seems like from the get-go, he's really sarcastic too, which I don't know that was necessarily like Nick Fury's thing, but they really, really want to go for that Han Solo vibe. Did you not also get an attempt at a Han Solo vibe?
Oh, yes.
And it's like when you miss the mark of trying to write the Han Solo tone, and it fails even just by a few inches, it's really it's like the reason Harrison Ford does the Han Solo thing so well is he's got the charm and he's got the wit and he's so cool, but like when you're lacking just a few of those things, that Han Solo thing just doesn't work, and I feel it becomes glaring. So he's definitely committed to it, like he's giving it his all, but I just felt they missed the mark a bit in terms of that charm and the wit that they were trying to go for.
Oh, I mean, it's not in the script, so there's nothing for him to pull from for it, for sure. But yeah, I don't know. Obviously he's still David Hasselhoff. You're gonna get. If you like David Hasselhoff, you're getting full David Hasselhoff.
Yeah.
Totally.
At any rate, they recruit him. This is where I was kind of like, I didn't realize these things were Marvel specific. Like, I thought they were just part of the MCU. But they get on one of those exact hover jets from the MCU movies, and then they go to the same like flying like aircraft carrier from the movies, and I was just like, wait, are these not just created for the movies? These are normal. These are part of this. This is part of Marvel normally.
Helicarriers, yeah, they're in the movie. They're in the movies too, like the MCU movies. They're like they have a cloaking device. There's pretty much an entire.
I guess I didn't realize those were also in the comics. I thought those were just from the movies because I was just like, they look identical. They look identical to the ones in the movies.
Yeah, no, it's part of it.
But when they come to this Bespin Cloud City that they're floating in, we get to meet two more characters we need to keep track of. We made like 5 characters here. There's 2. There's one that's only going to be here in the beginning and the end, which is Timothy Duggan, who's like an old friend of like
Jordan, say his full name.
I don't know.
Put some respect on his full name.
What is his full name?
Dum Dugan.
Timothy Elias Dugan is what he calls him when he gets off. He's like, Timothy Elias Dugan, hello.
Sure. So he's like an old friend. He's on Fury's side, and then they also meet Kate Neville, who can apparently read people's minds, and she calls herself an ESPer, which is the worst way. I don't know. Maybe it looks good on the page, but I just thought it sounded dumb. Which is that she's being augmented with neural implants, so she can kind of read people's minds.
Well, she already had ESP, and then they put neural implants to make it a little bit better.
Yeah.
Well, at one point she mentioned she prefers the term ESPers, and I was thinking, why? Why do you prefer that term? It's much worse.
The other term was parapsychic, which I was like, that's a better term.
Yeah, it's a much better term. And then there was like, isn't there a line where she mentions she has an implant, and like he kind of like looks at her chest, and she's like, no.
Well, that's the thing. He meets her, and then he sexually harasses her both verbally and then also psychically.
Yeah, psychically. Yeah.
Like he legitimately, she's just like, I know what you're thinking, and then he says it out loud. He's like, your tits.
Classic Fury.
I'm like, wow, Nick Fury, great guy. Then I can't believe you forgot about those characters. Then after he meets the general director of S.H.I.E.L.D., Jordan.
That's right.
Jack Pincer.
Yeah.
And he is, I guess, the opposite of old Duncan in that he hates him.
Yeah, he's like the lieutenant or sergeant in the police department who's like, give me your badge and gun. That's his role, where he's just there, regardless of how good or bad the mission is going to go. He just doesn't want anyone to break code, and yeah, he's there to be a wet blanket.
It's the standard pencil pusher in like the organization that's like, I don't like the way you're doing it. You don't play by the rules. You're too rough, and he's getting punched at some point by David Hasselhoff.
But I'm just gonna not to ruin things. We won't get into too much. But there's a little turn at the end of the movie where something happens, and they really missed. I thought there could be a funnier joke. The old like, you just killed Zombie Flanders. He was a zombie? That was the good line, and they didn't really pull it off on this.
Yeah.
And of course, there's the S.H.I.E.L.D.'s tech guy, their Q, I guess, if you're a James Bond fan, Gabe Jones, played by Ron Canada.
That's right, Ron Canada, yeah.
Which character was that?
He's the guy who makes all the gadgets for him.
Oh, that's
He gives him, and yeah, because we get a very important thing you need to track, which is he gives him a gun that only will work in his hand. I guess it's connected to his DNA. So if anyone else tries to...
No, it's attached to his thermal signal.
Oh, there you go. It's attached to his thermal signal. So if anyone other than old Hasselhoff, Nick Fury, shoots the gun, it's what I thought it was going to be. It just doesn't work. But what we're going to later see is not only does it not work, it like turns around and shoots the person.
Yeah, it fires backwards at the person holding the gun.
Yeah, it's a real like water gun sort of prank.
But I mean, because it's an electricity gun, it's fine. The Electra gun can shoot anywhere it wants.
Yeah. And we also get introduced to those robots real soon.
Well, that's it. He shows us two gadgets, the Electra gun, which we need to track, and then, of course, the LMDs, the life model decoys.
Yeah.
Which are just robots that, like, you put a skin on to make it look like David Hasselhoff.
I really like this part. I thought it was good because they don't really introduce it first. You just see a robot getting skin put on, and I'm like, is that a Hasselhoff face? And it actually doesn't look that bad. And then they basically, what you see is, I don't know, I guess they were already doing work assuming that if Nick Fury was coming back because they already have half of his doppelganger
they knew
robot.
He would put up a tough front, but he was going to come back. He was like, they know he's desperate and lonely.
Yeah.
They read the script ahead of time.
But what these life model decoys are is just what they sound like. They're robotic android versions of real people in S.H.I.E.L.D., but they're like, how would you say it, Luke? They're sort of like mimics. Like how did they describe them?
Yeah, it doesn't seem like they're like. It doesn't seem like they can like function as that person. More that they like they say that mimics their muscle memory or something like, and like it only ever repeats whatever David Hasselhoff says. I didn't understand with how they worked exactly.
And speaking of muscle, did you not think it was way more muscular than David Hasselhoff was? Because I remember seeing it, I was like, man, that David Hasselhoff is not that fit. It may be anymore, but like it was way stronger and bulkier,
They did a few upgrades to the robot.
Yeah.
But yes, this will be another gadget he'll get to play with this episode. Real quick though, you guys, because they get on S.H.I.E.L.D., they're boarding. We're getting to see the ship, like we're getting introduced to the entire world, and over the intercom, they welcome them to the headquarters of S.H.I.E.L.D. and tell you what S.H.I.E.L.D. stands for, and this blew my mind.
I don't remember. What did it stand for?
Did you not write down the acronym for S.H.I.E.L.D.?
No.
Kaveh, do you know the acronym for S.H.I.E.L.D.?
I always forget it off by heart, but it's not. It's the same one they use in the movies, right?
Is it? Is this in the movies? It is the Supreme Headquarters International Espionage Law Enforcement Division. Law enforcement is technically two words, but they tear it as one.
I think that's wrong.
That's what they say S.H.I.E.L.D. stands for. And in my mind, that is canon in the MCU movies now. I'm like, that's what S.H.I.E.L.D. means?
It's Strategic Homeland Intervention Enforcement and Logistics Division, which sounds at least a little more palatable.
Supreme Headquarters International Espionage Law Enforcement Division.
Why would you change that? To what end?
Maybe that's what it originally was. I have no idea.
I think it was maybe yeah. That sounds more comic booky, I guess, from like the 60s.
Anyway, that just made me laugh so hard. I'm like, this is the most insane acronym, and also to use law enforcement as one word blows my mind.
But when we're here up in this Cloud City, this is where we kind of understand why this body was stolen. This is like, how long is it at this point? Because this is where the plot's really kind of gets going. We're getting into the movie now, and it's probably like 30 minutes in now. Yeah,
20-ish minutes probably, somewhere in that vein. And like they give us the crisis basically is that body of the Baron inside of it, I guess in its cells, is the super virus called the Death Head.
Death Head virus. That's a great name for a virus.
A great virus. And it's
very metal.
So deadly, and there's no vaccine for it. It was created by a Nazi scientist, of course, Armin Zola.
I love Zola.
And I wanted to ask, are all these characters are from the Marvel comics, right?
Like, oh yeah, Zola is a huge one. He in the MCU he's played by Toby Jones, which is like he's a great character actor. But he ends up uploading his AI into a screen that is later on a robot. He becomes like a big head on a robot. He's a pretty cool villain.
Cool.
Yeah, Armin Zola is a cool character. I mean, in this, he's just he's a very sickly old man.
He's a sickly old Nazi scientist in a wheelchair. S.H.I.E.L.D. has him in a safe house in Berlin, so they're going to head to Berlin to like talk to him because I guess if Hydra is to get the virus out of the Baron's body, they're going to need this guy who developed it.
And, hey, Luke, let me just mention the German accents in this. There's a lot of like German accent attempts, but obviously there was no like dialect coach or real time given because if there's ever been just an approximation of an accent, that's what these actors are doing. It's just like if your friends are like, I'm German, like I'm the German. That's it. That's the German accents of this.
Yeah, that's the level of this movie for sure. And when they get to Berlin, they have to go meet an Interpol agent named Gail Runseter.
Yeah. Hey, here's the thing. I know it's gonna be a thing later. I couldn't tell the difference in these two women because she looks exactly like the villain, doesn't she?
And that's the best part because when she reveals herself to be Viper, she does the spray over her face, and it might have been just like I was watching like a lower resolution. I was like, is she a different person now? She sprays her face to reveal who she really is, and I couldn't tell that they were two different people.
That is very funny. That's a very funny reveal if you guys couldn't tell the difference between those two actresses.
I had to rewind it 3 times, and I was like, is she turning into someone else?
I actually thought when she showed, because what we have here, Luke, and I know we're ruining that, is they kind of go to meet her with a secret code, like, where's the bird fly? Flies in the morning, or whatever stupid spy code they have to use. And she comes down the stairs, and you see her, and I was like, is that the villain? I was like, I couldn't tell the difference. She looked exactly the same.
No, she's pretending to be this Interpol agent, and basically there's a whole sequence where like Hydra chases them. They run into a subway tunnel, and they're like, quickly jump through this holographic wall. It's the safe house.
I have a question. So they go meet her. Suddenly villains come and start shooting them. And Fury says, they have a car right there. And he goes, let's not take the car. Let's take the subway. And I was like, okay, I don't know how that's faster. But then they run down. They're not taking a subway car. They're just running down the subway tracks. And then they run through a holographic wall. So my point was, that was their plan. They had a backup. They knew in case they got chased, they would run down the subway into the holographic wall.
I assume that was always plan A, actually. There's no plan B.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Like it just seems like a thing like, wouldn't it be cool if they had a holographic wall? But it doesn't. I think just getting in the car and driving away would have been more effective.
I have a quick question, and this may be more for Kaveh. All of the Hydra henchmen in this look like Uncle Fester. They're bald and painted white. Yeah. They're all painted white. I don't know why, and they're all completely bald. They all look like Uncle Fester. Why?
I don't know. This is a design choice for this thing because I remember my note was like they all look like putties. Remember the Power Rangers putties? Yeah. They're just like silver or like Mr. Freeze in the Batman and Robin movie. I don't know why they look like that because usually the Hydra henchmen all wear like a green sort of outfit, like they have a cool kind of green costume. But no, this is just this weird design choice for this.
You know what I had thought, and I don't think this is right, but when I first saw them, what I thought it was supposed to be is because we see this guy cryogenically frozen. I assumed they were all like 1940s Nazis that had been unfrozen, and thus they all have this sort of like their skins messed up. That's what I thought, but that was just me making it up. But because there's no indication that's what that is in the movie.
That's giving it more thought than the creators had given.
Yeah, maybe.
At any rate, they get into the safe house. They meet this old Nazi Dr. Zola. He's in his wheelchair, and he's not very cooperative. So, of course, this is where that parapsychic agent comes in. That what is it, PSI-er?
ESP-er.
ESP-er.
She, by the way, I'm going to argue, she is the most useful person on the team.
I guess so, because she's like, I'm going to invade his mind and find out the information we need. And when she does, we get a bunch of stock footage of various apocalypses from movies that had bigger budgets.
Yeah.
And then she comes out and she's like, oh no, Hydra was already here. They put a post-hypnotic trap in his mind for me. And I was like, what?
Well, no, she sees stuff and it's like all this horrible stuff happening. Like it looks like atom bombs going off and that sort of thing. And she's like, there's all this destruction. And then Fury's like, she's like, I've never seen such evil. And then he goes, what did you see? And she goes, well, he's got a blocker, so I can't see much. And I was like, but you just did. You saw all that destruction. Like, you need something more specific?
I'm not sure. Maybe that was the post-hypnotic trap. I have no idea. But at this point, they're like, Hydra's already been here. This is when this Interpol agent, who is really the bad guy, is like, Nick, come with me. Let's have a conversation. I think there might be a Hydra agent in the building. They go to the next room, and she's just like, hey, FYI, you want to have some, like, makeout times now? What do you think? And Nick's like, I'm not so sure. So she, like, has a joy buzzer in her hand that she just zaps him with.
It's her ring.
Her ring.
Yeah.
He gets knocked out, and then she gives him a big old kiss in the mouth. She's like, haha, you got the poison kiss now. The kiss of the Viper.
They say what it is. It's the frog. Where did I write it down? There's a specific frog toxin.
Colombian tree frog or
That's
something?
what it is, yeah.
Something
Brazilian
like
tree
that.
frog poison? Yeah. Which is probably... That seems like they Googled, like, most poisonous...
Colombian tree frog, the most deadly toxin in nature. It made me laugh and laugh and laugh. There's just something funny about putting a frog toxin all over your lips and then kissing someone.
He's only got 7 hours to live.
Well, because at that moment, she could have just also used the bullet to the head, which is...
I mean, we all know why they've done this, because they want to up the tension and give you, a short time frame for when they can now win. Do you think that was effective at all in this movie of going like, okay, well, now he's being infected and we know that he only has certain amount of time to live? Did that add tension at all?
I think it adds to the physicality that Hasselhoff was lacking by at least saying like, oh, he can't do these stunts because his body's been poisoned for most of the movie.
You're like,
I feel
that's
sick.
why
when he's kicking, his leg doesn't go up very high, and you're like, classic tree frog poison.
Exactly.
But essentially, yes, he's poisoned. She gets away with somehow she escapes. Somehow in the confusion of Nick getting poisoned, she somehow escapes with the doctor. There's still like hundreds of agents there. I don't know how she pulled it off, but she does. And they're like, Nick, you only have 7 hours to live. The only possible maybe cure is you have to get some of Viper's blood, because if they created this toxin to go in her lips, then it must be sequenced to her DNA. So if we get her blood, maybe we can cure it. It was a long walk.
They need to have it out for the audience. You don't want to be too worried about Nick. You think there's going to be a chance he's going to be able to make it.
Like, if you thought this was going to be the only TV movie, you would have turned it off right now. Like, well, if he's going to die, I'm not interested. At any rate, they head back to the helicarrier thing, and they're like trying to figure out what to do. And I think this is, Jordan, what you were referring to earlier. The General Pincer, who's the chief, who's always mad at Nick Fury for messing up, is yelling at him. And then one of these life model decoy robots that looks exactly like him gets off an elevator.
But there's something different. Did you see what was different about it? That was the real telltale sign?
No.
Was wearing a hat.
Right.
I remember it was just like, we haven't seen this character with a hat before. Why is it wearing a hat? And it's like, oh, it's a robot. I was like, oh, okay. I'm glad it had it. What I think it is that they were like, they had to take a chance. They're like, has he ever wore a hat? We have to dress this robot, and we have to convince everyone it's him. It's like, yeah, just put a big hat on him. I think that's what he wears. And then it comes in wearing like a fedora.
Yeah. It walks in. Nick sees it immediately, shoots it several times. It then like opens its mouth and shoots at a hologram, where the hologram is the Viper, essentially explaining her plan that she's going to launch a missile full of Death's Heads virus into Manhattan if they don't give her $1 billion.
And actually, I thought this effect wasn't bad. You kind of have her like head like rotating like projection sort of in the middle of the room, and I was like, that doesn't look so bad.
I have to say, though, for a villain's plan, I'm just going to put this out there. So she spent all this time creating an exact duplicate of the head of S.H.I.E.L.D., essentially. Like, you would think you would do that. You'd implant it. She's brought it. She somehow got it on the helicarrier. So she's already overcome two massive obstacles. Recreate the head of S.H.I.E.L.D. and get it into S.H.I.E.L.D. headquarters. You think what you would do then is have your robot, do some espionage or look into things or be your mole in the organization.
Or an explosive.
Her whole plan is just to like have it walk into HQ, immediately get spotted so that it can shoot a hologram out of its mouth.
Yeah, basically just shoot a promo for what the plan is, essentially. Like, all that stuff could have also been sent through a text message.
Yeah, she didn't want to give him a call.
This is why Hydra can't succeed, I think.
It's true.
At any rate, S.H.I.E.L.D. comes up with a plan for how to deal with this. They figure that the missiles most likely are already in New York because they wouldn't be able to fly over the no-fly zone of New York or whatever. And if they're full of virus, they have to be inside of refrigeration, so they're probably on mobile refrigerated trucks. So they need to send one team, led by the contestant, to New York to look for refrigerated trucks.
Yeah, it seems really, you just have to remember, the technology of this organization, they have a flying base They have unlimited money, unlimited resources. It seems like super advanced technology, and they send out a team of 3 to drive around New York City, a city of millions and millions and millions of people, to try to find one refrigerated van. Not the best plan. Like, they don't have a scanner that can just scan the city.
Well, the other plan is they will send another team to track down Hydra's headquarters because they need to get the Vipers abort codes to even stop the missiles, apparently.
That's right.
And thankfully for them, that robot that looked like the boss, it was built using a laptop motherboard, and they're able to use the serial code on the laptop's motherboard to figure out where the laptop was purchased, which is the Illusion Islands. So they're just going to go there because they figure when the Viper gave her ransom message, when she gave she gives a time in the middle of it, and they're like, she didn't say Eastern Standard Time. She said Greenwich Mean Time, which means she's probably also in the Illusion Islands. I'm like, what?
That third act would have been so different if they had found out the laptop was purchased at Best Buy, and they just had to do the third act at Best Buy.
But so this seals the deal. Nick Fury takes another team on a stealth jet out to the islands, and he flies out there. Which, how does he fly a jet with one eye? I don't understand.
Well, I mean that might be the problem why they don't make it all the way to the island. Well, they do, but not in one piece.
Anyway, let's start. Let's break these into 2 separate things we talk about. Let's start with the Contessa's team that goes to New York City. So, Jordan, they do kind of have some tech. They have a satellite that is like scanning New York up above, and they're just pinpointing any vehicle that's kind of cold.
Yeah, so they'd be like, this thing through our whatever temperature scan, we can see this might be a van. Follow it, and so they chase this van. And
Hydra's thinking ahead. They've apparently positioned many cold trucks around the city, so they're constantly going to the wrong decoy cold truck trying to find these missiles. And we keep cutting back and forth between these 2 plot lines, so we keep coming back to New York. And at some point, they're just like, well, we've looked at every single cold truck on the island. There's only one left. I hope it's this one. And they drive by. They're like, oh, it's a cold garbage truck. I was just like, what do you mean it's a cold garbage truck?
And this was the big action set piece, I think, in the entire movie. Aside from the finale, this is your big there's 2 action beats going on, and it's about as riveting as a cold garbage truck.
Yeah, this garbage truck pulls into a warehouse to get ready to fire the missiles, and they're of course targeting the only thing you would target your missiles on in New York if you've got missiles, which would be the Twin Towers.
Of course.
Yeah, never forget, guys.
Never forget when Hydra blew up the Twin Towers. And there's a whole action sequence where Contessa and her team sneak in. They get the drop on this Hydra group that's going to do this. It's a long sequence, but they essentially just beat up all the Hydra guys, stop them sort of, but they can't stop the missiles from blowing up the Twin Towers because they need an abort code, and that's on Nick Fury's team. But her whole thing is wrapped up pretty easily.
Yeah, and let me ask you this, just a question. So we have a lot of scenes of Contessa, whatever her name is, and her team of characters who don't have names or lines, and they're waiting because they want the abort code. I get that. So they're up kind of in the rafters looking down on the Hydra people who are setting up the missiles. But she keeps calling back to S.H.I.E.L.D., and she's like, yeah, they haven't set anything up yet, blah, blah. I was like, well, why don't you go and attack now? Why do you have to wait to attack when they're ready to go? It's like, attack them now. You don't even need to have the abort codes because they haven't even set up the missiles.
I think what it is Nick's on thin ice with S.H.I.E.L.D. right now, and she knows he needs a win at the office in order not to get fired. So she could easily stop this, but she's trying to give her coworker a quick win. She's like, well, what if I wait a few more minutes? Nick might pull off his end of the bargain. He might do it.
Well, it's like, I get what they're doing. They want to add this tension that there's only so much time, but it's just one of those things where it's like, just stop them now. Stop them now, and then you don't have to worry about if Nick has survived or not. Just stop them.
No, but she doesn't.
She doesn't. No, she just keeps waiting, watching the guys set up the missiles.
And eventually gets to the point where they do need Nick to find that abort code.
Yeah.
Which brings us back to Fury, who's flying over these Illusion Islands. The S.H.I.E.L.D. is able to pinpoint where the Hydra base is because of phone calls she's making to her brother in New York or something. And at the same moment they pinpoint the base, somehow the cloaked jet they're flying is not all that cloaked because Hydra also happens to shoot missiles at it.
Yeah. I didn't even know it was cloaked.
They make a big deal about it being cloaked, and then the second they get there, they're like, "Oh, I guess I can see through our cloaking." I'm like, "Why did you? What was all this back and forth about?"
Yeah, so their plane gets shot with missiles, but they're all able to eject in time. So you see the ship blow up, but S.H.I.E.L.D. now doesn't have any ability to speak with them because they don't have a radio signal anymore. So they're the stakes are that they're now by themselves on this island having to infiltrate this base, but there's only a few of them. Although I didn't know if that changed much for them losing the plane. They still got where they needed to get.
Yeah,
and,
I mean,
and it didn't
Island
change
Jordan,
anything in terms of like.
I'm quite sure that team climbed out of a lake in BC after they crashed.
Well, also, wasn't there? I mean, are we missing the part where this was the mutiny too, where they all kind of decided to side with?
Oh,
Nick
that's
Fury?
true.
I thought that was a really interesting part because it was like the director of S.H.I.E.L.D. decides to finds out the Fury's flying there, and he says, "You got to turn back now," and essentially he's going to whatever their version of court martial all the agents, and they one by one side with Fury. And they're like, "I'm sorry, director, I can't. You're not coming. The transmission's not coming through." And then, do you remember what the director ends up calling Fury? He's really upset.
What does he say?
He says, "Don't you dare cut me off, you comic book coward." And I was like, "That's great. That is a little bit of a winky wink to all the fans that know exactly."
But
what
I don't
this is.
understand. Why did they go to all the trouble of flying to the Yukon to find Nick Fury to bring him back, and then when they put him on a mission, they want to court-martial him? I'm like, isn't that the point?
No, it doesn't make a lot of sense why they brought him back just to be. I mean, before that scene happens, they come up with a plan, and the director kind of says, "Nick, you can't go on the mission because you're 7 hours from being dead. We need somebody a little more reliable."
That's right.
And then what's funny is they don't come up with a plan, an alternative. The director just walks out of the room, and Nick's like, "All right, let's go." And I'm just like, "Well, this is on you, director. Like, you knew this was gonna happen."
Yeah.
It's all very silly. The director hates, like you said, Jordan. Nick's the loose cannon. He's the chief of the police department, and their only relationship is to yell at each other.
Yeah, he's like, "You're not going to do things by the book, are you?" And he's like chomping his cigar. He's like, "Absolutely not." They get into the base. That's the important thing. And we should say this is all clearly shot in Vancouver, right? Like, I didn't even look it up, but I assume this was shot in Vancouver.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Hydra's base is either an old base or a old lumber mill, one or the other.
Yeah.
They get inside. Nick's just like, "This is going too easily," and then immediately they are ambushed and thrown in a prison cell. And there's there's a whole sequence where Viper catches them, and she's like, "Pat them down for weapons," and they're taking all the weapons off of them, and there's some weird threats made.
I mean, right before that, too, that's the second time in the tunnel where he's used a spray because he notices there's a laser.
Yeah.
That was insane.
Gate, and he can somehow detect that there's invisible lasers that are going to work as an alarm or kill them. And their way around it is to use another hairspray type device, which is now the second time in this show that a spray type device has been the tool used to either reveal your identity or get past the trap, which I thought was creative.
How the spray worked was, they can't see the lasers, so they use the spray, and now they can see the lasers, and then they use the spray again, and the spray just melts the lasers into a circle, you cut a hole in a wall, and they can walk through. I was just like, I don't understand what this spray does.
It's a very good spray. Here's a question, though. So we get the guys, they break in, they have a couple fights, they get captured, they get all checked now, and what we're going to have happen is they're going to get put into a cage. But on Hydra's side, you've now caught Nick Fury, the big guy you're worried about, and his team. Why not just shoot them? Why not just kill them?
She says.
You now have Nick Fury for the second time, by the way.
Right.
She says specifically, it's like, we could kill them now, or we could hold on to them for a bit, and maybe we can torture them a little later. How about that, you guys?
It's just one of those things, I know why, because we don't want the character, you don't want to kill the character, but there had to be some reason that they should have, given, there's no time for it, or something has happened, or we can't shoot him because if a bullet ricochets and the air pressure in here, anything other than just let's just hold off because we're procrastinators.
Well, I love that they search them, and she's really sure Nick Fury is hiding stuff on him. So she flips up his eye patch and finds a lockpick device under his taped to the back of his eye patch. She takes it, and then they toss him in that cell. And Nick's like, she didn't find everything. He also flips open his eye patch, and apparently under his eye patch he has a glass eye, which he wears under his eye patch,
under his sewed shut eye.
So the glass eye is an explosive bomb, which I guess he's always just carrying around inside his skull at all times.
Yeah, I know.
And I have to give the writing credit because when she first reveals the lockpick in her eye patch, I'm like, oh, that's pretty cool. They've thought of that and decided to take that out. But then they just replace that with something else hidden under his eye. It's like the same thing.
That's the thing. It should have been like a multiple gag where they're like, they check under his eye patch and they find the lockpick. Then like, wait, check his eyeball. And they pull out the bomb. And then he's like, they didn't check my sinuses. And he also has another thing behind it.
Well, that's what it was. Is when she checked the eye patch, I assumed that what they wanted to do was do a gag where they check his eye socket, but they knew they couldn't quite do it. So I was just like, okay, but that's as close as they could get. But then he gets in that prison cell and he's just like, oh wait, though, I do have something in my eye socket. It's just an eye. I don't need to wear an eye patch because I actually have a glass eye under here that I could use and look normal with, but I choose not to.
Remember, he tells him, relax, it's only plastic, after he's like taking his eye out and it's attached to wire. We're like, yeah, we know that. We know you don't have a real eye.
Yeah, it's not like, he's like, just so you guys know, I don't just wear this eye patch just for fun. I don't have a real eye under here. They're like, oh, thank goodness.
Yeah.
It would be good though if it was like this whole thing where he's pulling out. He's like, oh, relax. It's a plastic eye, and they're like, Nick, that's the wrong socket, and he's just got this little bloody eye in his hand.
He's gonna have to wear 2 eye patches now.
So, but he's able to use his eyeball. They sticks it on the outside of the cell. They blow the wall out. They're free. Now it's time to. I think, is this a scene where they find her now?
Yeah, basically Nick immediately tracks down Viper and Dr. Zola, the old Nazi, and like. This is the scene you've been waiting for, Jordan. Dr. Zola's holding the electrogun that belongs to Nick Fury.
That's right.
And he like tries to pull the trigger, and the whole thing electrocutes him. And then my favorite part of this, Nick's like, don't do it. And he pulls the trigger. We see a man get electrocuted. And then there's a cut. And then we see his wheelchair roll down a staircase.
Did Nick Fury have, I didn't write it down, but he had some like pithy one-liner, didn't he? After the guy shot himself?
You're about to get zapped or something? I don't know.
Like, what's good for the goose is good for the gander, or something like that, he said.
What's weird is, why is he warning him not to fire the trigger? Like, this is going to be his way out of the scene, and he's warning the guy not to pull the trigger. It's like, let him do this to himself. It's your way out of the situation.
Nick really just knows he's always going to pull that trigger. Nick knows he can't help himself.
Exactly.
He's like, it's dramatic irony, bitch. And then, of course, after that's done, Fury and Viper get in a bit of a duke. There's a little bit of a fight sequence. They're duking it out. They're fighting it. Viper gets her hand on a gun. She turns around and shoots Nick in the chest like 17 times. He drops dead, and we're all like, oh no, Nick's dead. She's killed the hero. And then David Hasselhoff steps at her from around a corner and he says, haha, just joking. That was my life model decoy. And I was just like, when did that switch happen?
I know.
How did that life model decoy get here? What is happening?
Well, that's the funny thing, because they don't seed it at all. Like, you see the plane, there's 3 of them. There's not 4. It's not like there's a cloaked person in the background. Then you see the plane explode. They're getting into the facility. There's only 3 of them. But they've mentioned this robot earlier on. They're like, we can use this robot. But it's like, but how? Where? When?
Like, that was my question. When Nick walked in there and like when he said, "Don't shoot me, Dr. Zola, the gun will electrocute you," was that all the life? When did the life model decoy?
I thought it was the final that whole fight scene, because I think once the fight, not with the Zola, but with the fight scene with the Viper, I thought it must be the robot, because there was no other time. They were constantly in physical interaction.
Yeah. There's no time for a switch out.
I think the switch out had to be as after they broke out of the cell. That's when the other robot took off. I'm going to assume in his other eye socket, he has parts of the robot. He slowly started pulling them out. They built the robot, sent him in. That's the only thing that makes sense to me.
When we first see the robot, there's a line that says it can get broken down for easy transport. But there's no way it was small enough for that. Like, he just wasn't carrying anything ever, so it just doesn't make sense. But I guess that's my point. So what we're saying is sometime between breaking out and getting there. So the entire sequence is just the robot.
Yeah.
So Nick is just standing behind a corner watching how the robot does the whole time. He's like, I could jump in here and really like even the odds, but let's just see what this robot does first.
The robot also is now able to do clever quips and like little jokes too, which before was only able to repeat.
Kaveh, while he was putting him together, he was giving him the quips. So he was like a parrot. He's like, tell her after you shoot her, say shocking, and then that goes shocking.
But at any rate, yes, Nick steps out of the corner. He's not dead. He easily defeats the Viper. He drags her to a chair to tie her up in. And as he does, they walk past the cryogenically frozen body of her father. And he's like, hey, check out your popsicle.
Love it.
And then he's like, "Get it? Do you get my like?" He legitimately asks her, "Do you get the joke I just made?"
He truly, it's a BoJack Horseman moment of like, "Do you get what I just did there?"
It's so bad. It's so bad. But it's longer than you guys are making it. He's like, "There's your pop-sicle. Do you get it? Pop-sicle, like a popsicle. It's cold. Popsicle. Your dad. He's frozen. Popsicle." And I was like, "How long can this scene go?" It just keeps going.
Yeah.
It was the funniest part that like. For the first time, he's like, I better explain this one-liner.
You know what? That would have been a funnier take on the Nick Fury character if every time he made a one-liner, no one laughed, and he explained it 3 or 4 times. I'd be like, all right, that's something at least different.
Here's something, and just because I just happened to watch the pilot for it, but I watched the pilot for that Peacemaker show, that like James Gunn Suicide Squad spinoff.
Oh, right.
And Peacemaker is the exact same character as Nick Fury, essentially. Except in that show, Peacemaker, they acknowledge that like that kind of 80s like superhero kind of thing, like that kind of like hyper toxic masculine character is also kind of the dumbest man on earth. And like this is the one scene where I was like, oh, so this could be in that other show. Is like there's a scene where the guy's like, popsicle, you get it, like because your dad's frozen and like pop, like it's I'm like what is happening here? Why is this suddenly like aware of itself?
And again, I'll make the point. I got the sense that Hasselhoff kind of was aware of how cheesy this was. Now, I'm not saying his performance is good because I don't think it's good, but I think for him, there was a sense of what he was doing.
It's good for Hasselhoff. It's as good as Hasselhoff can do.
I don't know. I think You
think he was better in Baywatch Nights?
I just felt like he just had done that character for so long that he just sort of got eased into that character. I just feel like this was... I can definitely give him credit for trying.
Yeah, I think he's doing the most he can. I think he read the script and was like, this is what this is.
Guys, you may criticize him, but he had to play 2 characters. He had to play Nick Fury and Nick Fury the robot. So, I mean, he did pretty good.
And when you watch it back, you can see the subtle differences where he explains he's a robot.
Well, that's why, Kaveh, to your point earlier, remember you were saying that he seemed old and kind of stiff? It's just because it was a robot fighting.
There you go. Yes. They had pretty much cast the robot for this show.
At any rate, now that they've got the Viper tied to a chair, they bring in that parapsychic agent again, and they have her invade the Viper's minds to get the abort codes for them. And she gets almost all the abort code out, except for the last digit. She's like, I'm not sure if it's a 6 or a 9. And then they're like, I don't know. Nick, your choice, I guess. I was like, what? What do you mean your choice, Nick, 6 or 9?
It's also too long. The mind reading part was like about a minute long of just 2 people struggling with hands on the other temple, and it's like boys for like 70 seconds.
I was sure there was going to be like an Archer type joke there or something. He was like, it's a 6 or a 9. He was just going to be like, nice. They're like, no, seriously, this is serious stuff.
No, they can't. She can't tell if it's 6 or 9. For whatever reason, they let Nick decide which one it's going to be, and I believe he goes, let's go with 9. And then the Viper just has a terrible poker face.
She's smirk, yeah.
As soon as they say 9, she's just like, yeah, I got him. And then Nick's like, oh, no, wait, 6. Do 6.
And this is the big action set piece finale for the entire movie.
And good news, everybody. The Twin Towers are saved once again.
Yeah.
Forever.
I'm glad we're at a point where we can all joke about September 11th. That horrible, horrible tragedy.
At any rate, the rest of the S.H.I.E.L.D. agents, I guess, arrive and start arresting all the henchmen. I guess they get the blood from Viper because they're like, oh, great, now we're going to be able to cure you, Nick. Good news. And then as they're sort of wrapping things up, another random countdown starts happening. And like they all start panicking like, oh, no, what's this countdown for? But I guess the countdown is just a distraction because the Viper is able to escape her bonds of her chair.
Right, yeah.
Runs in, gets in the cryogenic tube with her popsicle, if you will.
The slowest moving tube. The descent
the
is
tube
so
begins
slow.
to descend into the earth very slowly. Incredibly slowly, they watch the bad guys descend away into the ground. Nick then opens the door to the cryogenic tube, looks into the hole, which is, at this speed, with that rate of speed, it's, 3 feet underground now?
Mm-hmm.
He looks down, and he's like, well, she's halfway to China. And I'm like...
She's right there. You could throw a grenade at her now.
Very stoppable, Nick. This is still a very solvable problem, but you're giving up already.
Well, he was like, I could bend down, but, my knees.
My knees, they're a little tired.
Yeah, does Nick Fury think, like, China's really going to just be right there, like 3 feet under? Maybe that's what he's mining for in the mines. Trying to
I'm almost to China.
He's like, every time, like, what? He's like, almost in China. They're like,
yeah,
Nick, you've only mined about a foot, almost in China.
You've been here 5 years and you got a foot down.
Yeah.
And anyway, they all head back to the SHIELD helicarrier. This is that big scene where the general director Pincher shows up, and he's mad about something. I guess that they lost the bad guy or something. So Nick just physically assaults him at work.
Yeah, I mean, we were worried about his diminished motor coordination was what the doctor was telling him he was going to have. And then as soon as I hear he's going to have diminished motor coordination, the boss shows up, I'm like, oh, there's going to be a punch here and a quip about diminished
Well,
motor.
they know the audience. The audience is so on Nick Fury's side, and they
Yeah.
hate this bureaucrat who's been trying to stop him the whole time. So they're like, I hope they punch that smug guy in the face. And he does. And you're like, yay.
Everyone at home is just like, yeah, I hate my boss too. I'm going to go physically assault him on Monday too. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I like that everyone else is just like, I'll allow it.
Yeah, I know. Nobody stops him. Nobody even helps the director when he's knocked unconscious.
No.
And then, of course, we get a little moment for Nick and Contessa where they, I guess, forgive each other for their past transgressions or whatever.
They look out on the clouds. They're like on the balcony of this ship or something.
He had that half-hearted apology that he gives her. That sort of
Yeah.
makes
He
up for
almost
everything.
apologized, and she's like, close enough.
It's the most you'll ever get from a man.
That could be a line he said.
Yeah, exactly.
And then there's this one scene. It's this very quick moment where Nick Fury starts I'm not going to be able to say the word.
Philosophizing.
He starts philosophizing. He gets a little philosophical here, and he says something that for a hot second I'm just like, well, how is this is too deep to be in the show, where he sort of says, he's like, I wonder if SHIELD only exists because of Hydra, and Hydra only exists because of SHIELD. I wonder if we're some sort of self-perpetuating circle. And he's like, never mind.
Yeah, I forgot about that line. I thought you were going to say that maybe he should start wondering, I wonder if I'll get in trouble for punching my boss at work.
No. He starts wondering if two giant organizations that run like world police are maybe bad for the world.
Yeah.
And he's like, never mind.
But then you get a scene where Dugan comes in, gives Nick Fury a cigar, and what I liked about it was he goes, thanks for the cigar. And he's like, you're not going to smoke it? He's like, I think I might quit. And what my thought was, they were like, hey, if we go to series, we can't have people smoking so much on TV, so let's just have the character quit now.
He's on the patch.
It's crazy. It's a crazy show, and it sort of it all wraps up with, I think if this were an MCU movie, this would be a post-credit sequence.
Yes.
But this happens now just at the end of the season, but like you would really see the credits rolling and this happening mid-credits. But essentially we cut to the Viper. She's somewhere. She's halfway to China, presumably, in a cave.
At that speed, she's maybe 20 feet down.
Yeah,
she's
they're
like 4
slightly
feet
below
where
where
we
SHIELD was. They just gave up. They didn't look. And they've managed to resurrect her father. So the frozen body of her dad, the Baron, is now back alive again. And they're like, Dad, I brought you back to life. And the two of them kind of have this like scene where they like, I don't know, where they plan. And it is way, way too sexual, right?
Okay, thank you. I was going to ask you guys what you read that temperature as, because it felt so romantic and incesty. It was
gross.
She
I didn't like it.
She caresses his face, kind of like her head tilted against his shoulder.
Why was his face all wrinkly? Like, it wasn't age wrinkles, right? It was like, I just got out of a cryogenic chamber wrinkly?
No, I think that man was very old.
Yeah, I think that was just the actor. They didn't have time to put makeup
So
on.
she was gently caressing and playing with his... Those were just age flaps.
Yes.
Yeah.
That was a weird scene, because it is just them being like, oh, Dad, you're back alive. Now we can do evil together. But the two actors shoot it in, like, the most intimate way possible. And I was like, oh, I don't like this at all.
How long do you think it takes to get someone up to speed, like an evil villain? Because he's been frozen since the 1940s, right? Let's say 45.
Okay.
So he's like, everything's going well, though? Like, we've taken over? And it's
because they defeated him in the 80s. So it's he knows. He knows
Oh,
what's
okay.
happening.
So I thought they had to bring him up to speed of 40 years.
It's only been 10, I think. Max 10.
Not so bad then. Not
They
too
just
much
have to explain cell phones to him, really.
Right. He's like pagers.
Yeah, he's like, give me my pager. Dad, no, you get a cell phone now. Now come give Daddy a kiss.
Yeah.
But that's it. That is Nick Fury, Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Mm-hmm.
Any final things, any little notes we didn't cover that you guys want to talk about?
I have 2 pieces of trivia to offer you. One
Right.
short.
I've got one piece of trivia, so you go first.
Okay. Well, the short one is that apparently David Hasselhoff didn't want to wear the eye patch at all.
This is the same thing I read. This is
yeah, I read this on the IMDb, but it's like he didn't want to, and then Luke, you can explain why he ended up having to wear it.
If you insist. And I don't know if I believe this. I wonder if this is just a funny rumor that started. But the rumor is he wouldn't wear the eye patch until just before they went to shooting when he got pink eye. So he decided to wear the eye patch.
I believe it. I believe it happened. Makes sense.
It's so funny. It's such a funny piece of trivia.
I also wanted to share a little bit of in-canon knowledge that's really interesting with regards to
Yeah, this is what I want to know. I want to know how this fits into the multiverse.
Well, so if you guys know, of course, who plays Nick Fury in the MCU.
Of course, Samuel L. Jackson.
Exactly. And so there's a really interesting history about that because Nick Fury for the longest time in the comics was a white man who essentially, I mean, Hasselhoff sort of nails it except for he needs a little bit of white near like the temples, white hair in the temples. But the idea for like changing Nick Fury was introduced in 2002 in like the Ultimates comic line. Mm-hmm. There's a writer named Mark Millar who had his artist kind of cast quote unquote Samuel L. Jackson as Nick Fury. They just kind of used his likeness. I think it was kind of unofficial. And then Marvel Studios saw that version in one of the comics, like, that's great. Let's get Samuel L. Jackson to play Fury for the films. And so this became like pretty popular because of the movies, and they started using comics. So the main Marvel MCU, the main universe, which is Earth 616, they decided to incorporate this look, but they had to find a story reason to why white Nick Fury now looks like Samuel L. Jackson. So there's a very contrived storyline where there's a bunch of heroes, Captain America and Iron Man, are looking for this like unknown, mysterious young black man. And you don't know why for the longest time. They look who this man is. He's unnamed. They're trying to find him. Hydra's looking for him too. And basically, after like 12 issues, this recurring storyline, you find out that he's Nick Fury's illegitimate son. He's like the bastard son of Nick Fury and slept with a woman years ago. Nick Fury has this young black son. And basically, they fight Hydra together. And you still don't know this young man's name. And in this fight, the young black man and Nick Fury both get captured. And the young man has his eye ripped out. And Nick Fury is killed. So Nick Fury, and this is his father and son. Nick Fury is killed, and the young man escapes and joins S.H.I.E.L.D. and officially announces what his name is Nick. And he is literally Nick Fury. And now he has to wear an eye patch because his eye's been ripped out. So he becomes he starts climbing the ranks of S.H.I.E.L.D. and becomes the next leader of S.H.I.E.L.D. So in canon, technically, Samuel L. Jackson is David Hasselhoff's son. But they don't want to reference this ever again in the comics. So it's like technically canon in the storyline, but they've decided to never bring it up. And so I think it's a really interesting detail that Marvel wants you to forget entirely, and that's how they've retconned Samuel L. Jackson from David
what?
Hasselhoff.
I have to say, based on what you said, I don't think there was a smoother way you could have changed that character. I think that's it. I think this is the perfect way to do it.
They really want you to forget it's two different people. They want you to just continue remembering that it's the same Nick Fury.
I still don't think it's as dumb as when Captain America died, and then they brought him back. They're like, how come he didn't die? They're like, oh, it was a time bullet that killed him. That was one of my favorite comic things of all time. It was a time bullet. I was like, oh, okay, fair enough.
Oh, that's where Tenet came from.
Yeah. Ugh. Yeah, don't listen to Tenet. You and I feel differently about Tenet, Luke.
All right, you guys. I think that about wraps up. So should we do the ratings for this TV movie? So out of 10, Kaveh, why don't you start us off?
I think it was a valiant effort for its time, but it's, despite everything and it feeling very much like a dad action movie, which is like the kind of thing dads like, I gotta give it like a 5 out of 10 for entertainment value because it just seemed boring for the most part. 5 out of 10, valiant effort.
What about you, Jordan?
I think you liked it more than I did. I think it was bad in every respect. It was badly acted. It was badly written. There was bad production design. It was badly edited. The overall story was bad. It's just not very good. And there's like, even the things that could have been redeeming weren't like, it wasn't funny bad, It wasn't like you have like, well, at least I'm going to hate watch this thing and have a good time. I can only give it a 3.5 out of 10.
I liked the part in the first 30 seconds where the annoying coworker got shot in the stomach. And that was all. So 0.5.
Wow.
I love it.
The rest of my 2 hours was a nightmare.
I checked the time on this thing, I don't know, 85 times. Every couple minutes. I'm like, how long? How much longer? How much longer?
I will say that David S. Goyer had gone on to write Batman vs. Superman Dawn of Justice, and I would happily rewatch Nick Fury again than that movie, because it's the only film I've ever actually, like, Batman vs. Superman Dawn of Justice genuinely gave me a headache, and every time I watch it I constantly get this weird migraine.
Because you wanted it to be darker?
It?
You wanted more gray tones? That's why it gave you a headache?
Yeah, I needed more gray tones and more dour mood.
How many times have you watched it? Every time?
I've seen it twice, and I've felt really bad every time, like physically ill every time I see it.
I think third time's the charm, so give it one more shot.
No, I'm done watching it, but I genuinely would like recommend this over Dawn of Justice, and those are both Goyer properties. Or not properties, but scripts.
You know what I'm thinking about right now? Now that we're talking about Goyer properties, do you think that little piece at the end where he's talking about can Hydra exist if S.H.I.E.L.D. doesn't exist, do you think that's a precursor to when Batman wonders if the Joker would exist if he didn't exist? Do you think that's where he pulled that right out of the Nick Fury script and moved it over to the Batman script?
I mean,
I wouldn't be surprised.
It's just something you've seen in comics constantly. Like, it's not like an original idea by any means. It was just funny.
A David S. Goyer original idea.
It's funny how they're, as you mentioned it, how they've handled in this, where it's like, could it be? Let's not even talk about it. You're not here for that. You're here for the cigar chomping.
He should have kept the cigars in his eye socket and like flipped his eye up, and there's like a bunch of cigars, and he pulls one out and then closes it.
I assume in other episodes.
Yeah, if this existed as a long running series, it would have been great to constantly have his third act way out of it. Just pull something, like he uses it like a purse or a backpack. His eye patch is just like is filled with things that will get him out of trouble.
Who's the guy who runs the Marvel Universe now?
It's
Kevin Feige, is that his name?
Yeah, Kevin Feige.
Kevin Feige, if you're listening, let us make the Nick Fury movie. Samuel Jackson will constantly be using his eye socket as a backpack.
At the end, you find out it's just one of these robots.
And we will bring into canon that his dad is David Hasselhoff.
Yeah, it'd be great to see Samuel Jackson be like, "Hey, we got you a LMD, life model decoy," and it's the David Hasselhoff one. Like, this doesn't look like me at all.
I just want a scene where he walks into a room and like someone's sitting in a chair smoking a cigar, and he's just like, "Dad," and it turns around, and it's like David Hasselhoff,
Yeah.
and they're both the same age.
Yeah.
So such a great movie, you guys. All right, well, Kaveh, thank you so much for joining us this week.
Thank you. It's been lots of fun.
I hope this was everything you hoped it would be.
All my dreams have come true.
And listener, if you have anything you want to tell us, you can email us at continuumdrag@gmail.com. We've been getting a lot of great feedback on some of our more recent stuff. People have been emailing in about Supertrain, about Steel Collar Man, Kolchak. People are loving it. People are loving what we're doing, Jordan.
Yeah.
You don't believe it.
I'm always amazed when someone emails in.
You guys, if you just want to shock Jordan, just send him an email. It blows his mind every time. He's like, where did this technology come from? And of course, on Instagram and Twitter, the handle is @ContinuumDrag. We'll have some clips from this: life model decoys, electro guns, Nazi in a wheelchair falling down a set of stairs, maybe.
Oh, a lot of hairspray related technology.
Yeah, well, hairspray related technology. It'll all be there. But that about wraps it up. So, listener, thank you for joining us, and Jordan, I will see you next week.
See you then. Continuum Drag is recorded in Toronto, Ontario. Theme music by James Rex Seidler. Produced by Jordan Dullock and Luke Black. Special thanks to Aaron Hughes.